Next up, we are thrilled to have the leading CCMS vendors together on a panel to discuss the things that you do need to consider when selecting a component content management system. And, I think it's such a great statement for the industry that you have all come together in a spirit of cooperation to support the industry and to support the people who are here. And that is what we strive to do with the DCL Learning Series, is not to do a hard pitch or a sale, but to help provide information that gives people the tools they need to select what's best for them. So with that, thank you all. Brian, lead us through a great conversation.
Sure, great. And I'm really pleased to have 4 experts here representing 4 CCMS vendors. We're going to have a little conversation today about considerations when selecting a CCMS. When I pulled this together with these folks a number of weeks ago, it was really meant to be at a high level, what should people be looking at when they're selecting a CCMS? And I know all of you have features and functions of your systems that you think are things that you need to highlight, and we'll certainly highlight those. But I want to first and foremost echo Mary Ann's thoughts and words about this being part of the DCL Learning Series, where we're really trying to share information with the community in general and help them make the right decisions. So I'm very pleased today to have Patrick Bosek from from Jorsek, the makers of DITA. I'm sorry. It's Scott from Ixia and Valentine from Companize, and Nanad Fertula from Bluestream Software here. These are 4 vendors that we've worked with in the past, and they're going to share some of their thoughts. And I think what we want to do is give each one about 5 minutes to go through their little pitch and their deck, and then we'll have a conversation that will, I think, be less feature function on a specific platform related, and just more talk about the state of DITA and where people are going, where vendors are going and enhancing their products. DITA is a pretty mature market right now, and we have 4 very, very mature, robust systems here with us, but there's always room to do more or specialize or focus in new areas. So, we'll look at things like authoring and review and localization and outputs and integrations with other systems. I think those are very important. I think the first one up, Mariana, the first slide up, I think, is Nanad. Are we going in alphabetical order of company? There it is. So Nanad, I'm going to hand it off to you, and maybe you could spend the next 5 minutes or so introducing yourself in Bluestream and talking a little bit about some of your product, but also just things in general that customers need to consider when selecting a platform. I think you're on mute, Nanad.
That better?
Yeah. Did you say, oh, am I? Am I getting to be a lip reader, a good lip reader?
You are. I Zoom will do it to you. How you guys all doing? First of all, thank you for having us and for thinking of us, including Bluestream, in this discussion. We, of course, are familiar with Ixiasoft and DITA, and of course, Companize. So it's good to see you guys. Some of you I know, some of you I don't really know. Yeah, so we've been doing this for a very long time. Bluestream's been in business since your XML business since '97. And we rolled out the first version of this application called Xdocs in 2006. And it's been a long road, but it's been a fun road. My particular function in this organization is I run the business side of things, and I'm not so good at marketing, but the marketing guy was on holiday. So you have me to sort of talk to you about this stuff. So a little bit about our system. Essentially, Xbox, we like to think of Xbox as an enterprise system. That is, generally we sell to large enterprises looking for robust solutions. But we also find that smaller organizations tend to start using Bluestream as a departmental solution, and then it propagates throughout. So as you can expect, the system has all the bells and whistles that an enterprise component content management system has. But we're a little bit different in the sense that we also have a delivery platform, which is part of the system. And we've also started specializing in the vertical of manufacturing. So we actually integrate with a number of PLM and ERP systems. We have been quite focused on information flow in manufacturing. So what we like to say, everything from engineering to fulfillment, right? And so when we start getting into the discussion about, what sells the system, we'll kind of get into a little more of that. But yeah, so customers all over the world, and we have many partners all over the world that have been sort of building solutions around our system. That's all I got for you.
Great, thanks, Nanad. So let's go to Companize, and Valentin. I haven't met you yet, but and I think are you fairly new to Companize, or have you been with Jean-Luc and Frank for a while now?
Well, first of all, yes, nice to meet you. I have actually been in Companize for the last 10 years, more or less.
Right.
But I'm more a pre-sales consultant and DITA adoption and content strategy consultant. So I am not the face of Companize. I'm not the one going to conferences. I am the one working with our customers and helping them with the CCMS adoption and where does that pesky data goes. So that's what I've been doing. So Companize has also been in the DITA world for a while, providing an enterprise component content management system. So our aim is to have a flexible CCMS with an out-of-the-box DITA solution and a network of integration partners. So the idea from the start was to be as open and flexible as possible. So when well, some of you know Frank and Jean-Luc. One of the important considerations that they had was to have no vendor lock-in, and so to have as little constraints to leave a CCMS that doesn't work and go to another one. And as Nilad mentioned, you have a lot of different sized companies. Some of them need something extremely robust that is going to scale up, but other companies they need a small CCMS that they have very concrete, very simple but crucial needs, and they don't want all the bells and whistles around it.
Right. You mentioned one thing that I'm going to come back to in a little while when we open up just the discussion amongst all ourselves, but that ability to, at some point in time, decide, am I on the right platform, and is it easy to move to another platform? And so that'll be something. I'm seeing a lot of that in the industry right now. But
yeah, well, you can't, especially after the year we've had, we can't pretend that the processes are going to stay the same for 20 years. So you're not really choosing a solution and a process forever. You're choosing something that should work now and hopefully will keep working, but at some point it might not work anymore for you. and then you have to change things.
Right. Great. Patrick, over to you. I know Jorsek's been around for a while. DITA's been around for a while. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your company and your product, and just your thoughts in general in terms of what's important for a client to consider when they're selecting a platform.
Yeah, sure. So you're right. We've been around for 10, 11, 12 years, something like that at this point in time. As DITA for that entire time. I think when you're looking at choosing these platforms, it all really comes down to what's going to fit best for you and your user base. So if you look at our customers, they tend to be less traditional tech hubs. They tend to be more integrated teams. So you'll see a lot of our customers will badge themselves more in like the information development type of an organization. So they'll be cross-functional. There'll be a lot of like different people that play inside of it. And I think that's really because of like kind of how we've designed our system to be very collaborative, very Google Docs-like. So it's a SaaS-first platform. We really drive things through APIs. So you'll see like, we do a lot of our delivery systems as being like headless. That's all like API driven. And it's just kind of designed around that web paradigm that, tends to be very, very cross-functional and collaborative. Other than that, I think that like a lot of the very standard like enterprise stuff that I think you'd find is pretty ubiquitous, and the more enterprise CCMSs, like we do all those things, so we scale really well. We've got taxonomy support. We deal very well with metadata, very sophisticated search, like all that stuff, kind of the table stakes stuff that you see. But I think that it is important when you're looking at an enterprise system. So yeah, I think that we kind of fit into that same class with, I think, probably everybody else that's on here.
Yeah. So Patrick, you were SaaS from the start, is that correct?
Yeah, we've always been a purely SaaS application.
Right.
So originally, like we were enough of like more of like a hosted solution that we could deploy on premises, but we don't do that anymore. And that's because like we're so woven into like infrastructure as a service, and like a lot of microservices and a lot of distributed data stores and those types of things that are like directly cloud-based. Like deploying on premises has become pretty prohibitive. So like we've moved to a place now where we're 100% SaaS, and if you need an on-premise solution, it's just not us.
Yep. Okay, great. Scott, nice to meet you. I know you're just 2 towns over from me, and here in New Hampshire. I could probably shout out the window and you could hear me. But welcome. And Scott's representing Ixiasoft, another vendor that's been around in the XML space for quite some time, predating DITA. Maybe you can just share a little bit about Ixiasoft and your thoughts on what makes sense in selecting a DITA CCMS.
Sure. Thanks, Brian. I'm Scott Cush. I handle the business development for Ixiasoft. We've been around since 2000. The CCMS itself has been in place since 2006. It's really an end-to-end, think of it as the assembly plant for the content, for the entire documentation lifecycle. So everything from tech writers to SMEs to localization managers, really extensive set of features, and you're integrated with a single repository. It's really robust, it's scalable. I think that's what you want to look at, as well as the scalability of the platform, where you could be 3-5 years from now, whether it's through growth or through acquisition. And really have some advanced functionality for your authors and your information architects, and once again, the localization managers as well. Now, we are open and flexible, as everyone else says, REST APIs. We have integrations with some of the best-in-class organizations around the DITA ecosystem, with companies like Oxygen, which is embedded into our CCMS, Acrolinx and Congri, Antenna House, Maramo, Zoom In and Fluid Topics for content delivery portals as well. So a lot of our customers really kind of look at the best of breed approach to that, and we try to align ourselves with people like that within the industry. I think a move is the usability of the platform may have been great as far as the features function and the robustness of it, but we've really done a refresh in the last few years to improve that user experience, to really make it more intuitive as we move the product over to the web. So from everything from authors to tech writers to SMEs who don't need to know DITA, to have access and auditability of that within a single platform is really something that brings a big benefit to our prospects or our customers. Ixiasoft it's an all in-house shop. There's no partners doing implementations. There's no third parties doing anything like that. Very low turnover, a lot of expertise. Members of our team are on the Oasis TC. So I think, understanding who you're partnering with and specifically within a certain vertical, do they understand, do they walk the walk and talk the talk? And I think we all have our strengths in certain verticals as well. And then, I think we all say we're enterprise, but I'd say 75% of our customers are over $1 billion plus in revenue. Customers like an SAP, Ericsson, DocuSign, Toyota, Workday. So, it's really extensive requirements for large scale deployments is what we get into, and we understand, 6 to 9 month engagements. And we have some teams with as little as 5 users that might be a 3-month engagement, but I would say our sweet spot and a majority of our customers are enterprise global companies. We've got the teams in North America, Europe, and Japan to support as well. And, we're really, according to the analysts out there, the latest release from Ars Logic, we're a market leader, I would say. So it's always worth looking at, one of the upper rights in one of the quadrants and looking at an independent study to kind of get their opinion on the platform as well.
Independent studies are always good if they include everybody.
Yep.
In any case, so let's just talk a little bit about authoring. So until the last few years, you had a few choices of your XML authoring tool, right? You go back to the old Arbortext days, and that was the de facto Arbortext editor was the de facto standard. Then you had XMetal lurking out there, and then our friends at Synchrosoft came out with Oxygen. So now you've got these three, but then you've got all these other things starting up like Fonto XML and X-Editor and others. So where do you all? And I'll go back in the same order, Nanad. I know you support a number of these tools natively, but where do you see the whole authoring experience going against your CCMS or just CCMSs in general? Are you mute? Are you on mute?
Sorry about that. Yeah, so I was saying that, did you read my lips? Did that go around?
No, I didn't.
Probably a good thing. Yeah, so as Patrick was saying, I think maybe Scott as well, it's authoring is moving to the web. Systems are moving to the web. There's no question. I'm very happy to see that. And it's very role based. So, I'm seeing sort of tools out there, and maybe let's talk about Fonto for a second. They have 4 different products these days. Right? So Fonto came out as an XML editor, web-based editor. And now they have a contributor, reviewer, and so it's really sort of depending on the role that depending on who you're trying to engage. That's great, and I think that the value there is that we are seeing these systems propagate throughout an organization because of that reason. Especially when you're providing something that is Google Doc-like, that's or something that's wiki-like is wonderful. But that environment will not necessarily, help, a power author, right? So yeah, right. we support a bunch of these tools, of course. We haven't written our own. We sort of stayed away from that, and we decided not to acquire one recently. So we give our customers choice.
Yep. Valentin, what are your thoughts? What tools does Companize integrate with for the authoring experience?
So again, going back to being open and flexible, from the start, we were integrating. We were aiming to integrate with as many tools as possible. So using open standards to communicate with the tool, and really, when we say the tool, it might be several, because you have the power users, you have the experts, the DITA architects that are going to go really deep into DITA elements or reuse mechanisms. And you're going to have SMEs or casual authors that really don't need the same environment. And depending on the organization, you might have a different strategy. You might go all Oxygen Desktop, Oxygen Web Author, or you could use Fonto on one side and Oxygen Desktop on the other side. Using Arbortext for the authors. And again, well, it might happen that after a while, the population of your authors change, and a tool that was working now needs to change as well. Or you need to extend your authoring base to more SMEs, and the SMEs in your industry definitely don't want to use Oxygen. And then you really have to go, okay, so what are the other options? And in the other options, and that's what the previous panel was, people were saying about planning, what are the stakeholders going to want? What are they going to accept? Because we know SMEs have not much time, not much interest in learning a completely different system every 6 months. And so their opinion on which tool is going to be important. And I'm really glad to see new editors coming in, because that means more choices. And sometimes you don't need the ultimate widest DITA support, but you need a tool that looks attractive to the particular industry experts you're asking to contribute.
So Valentine, you talked a little bit about supporting multiple editors, and I think it was multiple editors simultaneously for the same client. And have you seen issues with that, with things that the editors write back that one editor can write back or read, the other editor can't write back or read correctly? Is there any concern there if you're supporting a multi-editor environment?
Well, obviously you have to work with the editor vendors. Some of them are going to be okay having options. We're going to talk, for example, about the comments, the comments in each of the tools, and some tools have compatible comments, and some tools don't unless you do a customization.
Right.
So that's a consideration, but at the same time, it might be worth doing this customization because, well, it is unlikely if you've got your technical writers working every day, all day in Oxygen Desktop, it is unlikely that they're going to start using Fonto.
Right.
So the fact that the editors need to work together for us is kind of a given.
Yeah. Okay, great. Patrick, and I think your organization really has its own in-house developed editor integral to the system. But are there other editors that you'll support in conjunction with that? And what does that look like?
Yeah, sure. So it's true. We do have our own authoring environment, and this is something that's traditionally been, it's one of those things where you kind of have to decide what fits for you. And a lot of our customers will choose our solution because our approach to authoring is the one that fits best for them.
Right.
And it's not for everybody, but for the organizations that really like what we do and how we do it, a lot of it does come from the authoring interface and the fact that it's tightly coupled with the CCMS. it gives us some really interesting capabilities that's much harder to do when you don't have that really tight coupling. But we do also integrate with Oxygen, and we integrate with Simply XML or Simply DITA.
Yep.
I'm not exactly sure which brand is the one that they prefer, but the Word plugin from Content Mapper. And those two tools, like we chose integration with those because they both fit things that like our authoring environment isn't really intended for. Oxygen is obviously more of like a DITA like IDE almost. It's something that's really for people who like they know DITA, like they're in it, like they're practitioners, like that kind of thing, which is a good portion of technical writers. And Oxygen does that very well. And Simply XML is like the totally other end of the spectrum. It's like people that you can't pry Word out of their cold dead hands, and they just have to have something in Word. So those two I think are two very interesting approaches to authoring. And then our system our authoring environment kind of fits everybody else, is how we've gone about that.
Yep. Scott, I know you integrate with a lot of tools, and I believe Ixiasoft recently bought a tool. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
All right, we recently acquired AuthorBridge, and see, Oxygen is embedded. Oxygen for the web is embedded into our web version of the CCMS. The idea wasn't to acquire AuthorBridge for, to continue running on its own or to replace Oxygen down the road. It's really to optimize that user experience. We all kind of tell people that Oxygen is very, user friendly for the non-DITA people, but it is still, it's not quite as easy as I think it needs to be. So the idea with AuthorBridge is to kind of really make that, evolve that into an improved experience, bring it into the product, but we're still relying heavily on our partnership with Oxygen and having it embedded within the tool.
Yeah. So the plan is to support both going forward. For the casual user that needs a simpler experience, the AuthorBridge may bring that to them. But your active users who are thinking DITA and thinking structure and thinking markup every day really belong in Oxygen.
Right, for us, yes. That's what we're supporting and aligning our roadmaps with going forward.
Yeah. So the whole SME review process, and SME, covers a wide range of departments in the organization. Obviously, your engineers who develop products that you're writing documentation around, your product marketing, your legal team, your safety team, governance, anybody else, depending on the organization you're in, needs to have a window into the system and what's being created, what's being updated and maintained and pushed out. And I think the whole review cycle is an offshoot of the authoring cycle and the same tooling. Nanad, maybe you can talk a little bit about, I know you have your WEX product, which is based on the Oxygen editor. Yes. The web. Are you going to come off mute again?
You're good, sir. Yes. Sorry, Brian. The question was?
So looking at the review cycle as an offshoot of authoring, but that information, the markup, the comments need to come back in. So what is your solution for the review cycle? How does it flow back into the authoring cycle for final reconciliation and updating of the content?
Thanks. So yeah, no, in the case of say Oxygen, which we've tightly integrated within the web, Oxygen Web, of course, they have a pretty good review mechanism. So they track comments. You can comment on comments in addition to track changes. So we really like that, and actually the customers really like that. Comment will point to sort of the track change, and in our system, essentially, we handle those, we track those comments, and you can actually you can search on the comment within the CCMS, and you can filter on comments and so on and so forth. So review is something that we've been thinking about for a very long time, especially web review. I was just thinking about this we essentially started doing web review when Oxygen had an applet. And I think you're old enough to remember that, which was, I won't say 10 years ago, you know, and of course applets went over like a lead balloon. And of course, the right way to write these things, as Patrick knows, is JavaScript. And yeah, no, review is something that, and we're also, when it comes to review, what we do essentially is we set capability. So a person can review on the project within a workflow, outside the workflow, and so on and so forth. So once the review capability is set, certain features appear. Of course, if a different capability is set, different features will appear. So that's what we're finding. And I think where we want to go, the other thing that we're also doing in delivery, we're seeing review as well. Now, this is review, again, this is role-based, this is review by your customer, right? So you wouldn't necessarily send your customer to Wix. Maybe that's where you send subject matter expert. Right. But what we're seeing is comments in delivery, right? And aggregating those comments. And there are tools out there that have done a decent job there. But, you know, we're seeing that sort of a review as well. So once the content's been published, you know, having people essentially comment on that. So the public having comment on that, that's different from Oxygen, actually.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing different. Like I said, again, back to roles, right? Even when it comes to review, who is the reviewer? So that's sort of the stuff we've been doing, yeah.
Yeah. Valentin, any thoughts and comments? And I'm going to keep moving this quickly because we've got like 13 more minutes and a few more topics to cover. But Valentin, your thoughts on the whole review, subject matter expert or customer review and comment back?
So yeah, I just want to say that review is one word hiding a lot of very different things.
It
like
is.
I've been a technical writer like 10 years ago, and before Companies, and despite the CCMS, some of the SMEs only reviewed if you printed out the PDF and you brought it to their desk, and you basically sat on their desk until they reviewed it.
They write it and then they scan it and they email it back to you sometimes.
Yes. So when it was remote, that's what they would do. And from the customers and the users I train, it still happens. And so when we talk about review, well, the ideal, of course, is having them using a tool, using the comments in the tool, or even modifying the source file directly, and then you review the review. But reality is you're going to have SMEs that want just a preview PDF and make general comments on it. And some other SMEs, they will be happy with a dedicated review tool. Sometimes you do need to follow up much more closely. And so the process, even within an organization, might look very different for the people involved. So there are tools, and there are track changes, and there are comments, and there are workflows, and that's quite important. But for review, the human element is probably, I think, is one of the biggest.
Great. Patrick, how are you doing with your SME review with your developed web editor and your integration with Oxygen? What's that look like for your customers?
Yeah, so most of our customers that have really intense review cycles, which most of our customers do, they tend to be very centric on our authoring environment because the way that we've built the collaborative review functions with track changes and comments and all that kind of stuff, it works better if it stays like in our system, right? One of the things I think is valuable to think about when you think about like the different personalities and people who are involved. Oftentimes it's like really the small things that make the difference. So one of the things that we saw a few years ago that really was like game changing, as simple as it is, was the ability to just send a share URL. So instead of it having to go through like a process, like now you've got Slack, and the virtual equivalent of like sitting on someone's desk is sending them a share URL and, you know, a point up icon, you know, every day. And we saw a lot of improvements in the overall adoption of review with just some of that really, really simple stuff. And then also being able to roll some of that stuff up. So being able to see like how many comments you have across the system, those types of things. So when you look at like those little aspects of it, they can really be the game-changing aspects for getting like SMEs to truly do the review function.
Within the system and not try to
Right.
subvert the system. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and not in PDF because nobody here wants that.
Well, some people still want.
Nobody here wants that.
Nobody within the authoring team wants to get PDFs back from the reviewers, I'm sure.
Right.
But Scott, your thoughts on this whole review process cycle?
Well, I mean, we're seeing it, especially now with everything we're going through, everything from engineers to developers, you know, for the SMEs, they're utilizing the system. I think the key here is to have something that's flexible as far as the roles, everything from the advanced user for the tech writers to another level, which could be contributors that has similar functionality, but maybe not IA or localization functionality. Reviewers with just all they can do is annotate. Maybe they can edit. Maybe they can edit and approve. So not just having kind of a cookie cutter, but being able to adapt to a global team and provide the different roles and the different functionality is kind of what we're seeing. But it's definitely in use. The collaboration is just evolving constantly with the customer feedback in every release. And like you said, it's real world. We're seeing teams of 200 to 500 SMEs globally, at least utilizing the platform.
That's great. Well, we've got 3 more bullet points here and we have 8 minutes left. So Nanad, you've got 1 minute on localization. You've got 40 seconds on localization. Talk to us about localization in 40 seconds.
Do it, it's good. I mean, listen, localization is sort of key to a lot of these projects. Obviously, you know, most of our customers, I would say collectively in this group, our customers translate. And so we've been, you know, we co-developed this module a long time ago with one of the largest translators in the world. And, you know, the difficulty of translating data content never ceases to amaze, or rather manage a translation. So that's what we're finding. Certainly most of our customers, I would say 80% of our customers use that feature.
Yeah.
And what we've done in recent times, we sort of automated it. So of course, as you can imagine, as the volumes grow, product lines, cross product lines and stuff. So we've done some interesting stuff there, but I would say very, very, very important, as we all know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I have a couple of customers that have localized on your platform, and it seems to fit the bill. Valentine,
So, yep.
40 seconds.
40 seconds. So I think it's crucial. Most of our customers either are using our translation management platform, or they're planning to do it in the next years. And I think what's important is, again, even within a team, you might need several workflows for translation, and you might need several workflows. You need your system to handle the separate workflows. Maybe you're translating to French with an external translator, and you're translating to Japanese by sending to the Japanese team, and that's also using the system, but in a completely different way. And you're translating 3 other or 18 other languages using a translation agency, and or you might have a TMS, you might have an automated system that has to plug in with your solution, and you might use a mix of that. You might be moving towards a TMS, but still using translators in-house or not. And so you really need to have a system that can accept these things and see your translations, the big picture of, okay, what's the status of all my translation? Is the French up to date? Is the Japanese up to date? Do I need to start another translation, and where? So that's, I do think it's extremely important.
All right, you went way over 40 seconds.
Sorry.
Give me 40 seconds on translation.
I'll do mine faster than that. So I think that everything that they've said is accurate. I think there's a lot of boilerplate stuff that you'll get in every system. But the thing I will say is that I do think every one of the systems, this is a place where how they operate, it's very, very different. And that's not one is better than the other. It's just different. And I can't tell you how many times I've asked a customer, like, why did you choose us over, whoever? And they said, translation. And I can't tell you how many times I've asked the customer, why didn't you choose us in this process? And they said, translation. So it's like, it's one of those things where like, it's what you need and you should try it and validate it before you buy a system.
It's a very important, it's a very personal decision, I think, in your translation requirements and the way the process needs to work. As Valentine said, we may automate and push off to this vendor, but we may do some in-house, and we may send some out to an agency, but everything needs to go back as seamlessly as possible. Scott, can you give us just a quick thought on translation and process?
I would say, once again, don't necessarily fall in love with, it has to be done with a certain way. That flexibility, like Valentine said, is key, because there may not be a value to use a TMS for Turkey and Ukraine or Russia,
right,
for example.
Yep.
And being able to use a TMS for the high volume where you're seeing the real cost savings, and make sure that system adapts to that and doesn't make you change your business processes.
Right.
That's what.
Yeah. So, I think this is one of the most important things for any global organization in considering the platform, what their flexibility, not just their ability, but their flexibility with translation process is, and that will sort of guide them to a short list of vendors. We've only got a couple of minutes left. Outputs, I know we could probably spend a lot of time, and I know you've all mentioned integrations. I mean, we did an open toolkit's great to integrate through past the basic PDF output, integrating with things like Antenna House and Maramo, and I've done some things with tight integrations with InDesign and other rendering engines. But some of these outputs really get driven to delivery systems. Nanad, I know you have your delivery system, but you integrate with other delivery systems. Just anything that folks should consider just very quickly on the output side when they're looking at the platform, the CCMS platform vendor.
Yeah, they should. I'll just say this much: they need to be sort of migrating and steering away from PDF. That's my.
Well, I mean, that's the whole goal. But there's always going to need to be a PDF, and I don't think the PDF should be a self-service PDF that has a rudimentary layout and formatting structure. You still need the properly designed and laid out documents that you're going to get through an Antenna House or Maramo. But yes, I mean, digital delivery is the way to go. Valentine, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, we integrated, for example, for dynamic delivery with Fluid Topics for its metadata management, and it's a different view on feedback. But it's I'm also going to mention integration with LMSs, with learning management systems, because DITA is also learning and training for the specialization, and being able to integrate with an LMS if you're in that industry is going to be key. Okay,
great. Patrick, I'm giving you 30 seconds now because you're pretty brief. It's the same.
I don't know if I should have been. It's like if you don't use your budget, you lose it. I'm just going to say, like, API is the thing to look at. Like, make sure you're buying something which has a high performance, CDN backed, globalized API for delivery that can scale up, meet your requirements, and all those things. It matters for SEO, like the performance, the page performance you get, which is really backed by the request performance you get, which is backed by the API. It's all going to come back to that. And then every other output you do besides website and PDF is probably going to be some aspect of API driven. And anything you do integration wise for delivery is going to be API driven. So when I'm thinking about like future delivery, future output, I'm thinking about API.
Okay, great. Scott, your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think understanding what the real requirements and separating it from the CMS is kind of the way we would approach it. We have several enterprise customers with Fluid Topics integrations, Zoom in integrations, and that expands into their integration with a ServiceNow or a Salesforce. So really understanding that it expands beyond just maybe the tech pubs team and how that's working. It could be non-DITA content going in there as well.
Absolutely.
And I think, you know, the LMS part of it as well, that's requirements that are understanding the bigger picture. But, you know, we try to say, don't build the Taj Mahal all at once, maybe start in phases once again.
Yeah. So systems integrations, I mean, outputs are a form of systems integrations. We've already talked about APIs, the importance of them and everything. We've got a minute left. Nanad, one thing you want people to know about your roadmap, your product strategy, just something quick that's important that you want to get out there.
Yeah, so system integrations, it's really all about becoming part of the ecosystem. And the CCMS is actually a part of that larger ecosystem. And so this is where I think Patrick hit it on the nose. It's all about API.
Yeah.
So you're integrating with, I mean, that's where you got to think of it that way. It's not a thing to itself.
Yep.
CCMS should not be a thing to itself.
No, it's part of the enterprise process. Yep. Valentin?
I completely agree with Nenad. I would add use open standards and use open technology, open platforms. So you have tools. You can act on your solution, and you're not dependent on integrators. And I would also add where Compromise is going is thinking again. How are people actually working, and how do we not get in their way? So the tool is as transparent as possible, and the way that people are working is the way forward.
Great. Your closing thoughts, Patrick?
Yeah, I'm gonna basically agree with Nanad and build on what he said. The future of content systems is ecosystems. Like, there's no way around that. And every sufficiently mature content ecosystem is going to have a number of different components. There's no one system to rule them all, but in those mature systems, there's going to be a CCMS. There's going to be something which is a knowledge, product, and reference focused system that has to have a certain number of pieces of functionality. And one of those things is going to have to be an ability to integrate using open standards with the rest of the ecosystem in a very, very transparent, API-driven way.
Transparency is good. Scott, you're the last one up. We've already gone over, so this is going to be the last bit of our presentation. Go ahead, Scott.
I think making sure everything's open, and another way to do that is, you know, validate real-world use cases with other customers as far as references, run POCs or trials, and make sure that it is open and accessible, and it can be done. And I think all the vendors are willing to do that for the right opportunity.
Yeah, for the right opportunity.
Right.
Yeah, because exercising APIs is not inexpensive. So you either trust the vendor or you exercise the API. It does come with some development cost. I want to thank Marianne. I don't know, do we have one more slide? I don't know. I think this was the last slide. That was the last slide. Great. So I want to thank all of you. Nanad, as always, it's a pleasure. Valentine, great meeting you. Patrick, I know our paths have crossed at conferences before. Scott, maybe we can go play golf at Sahegan Woods soon. I used to live in that neighborhood. And here's Marianne to take us to the next bit of the session. Thank you all.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you all so much. We really appreciate it.
Bye, thanks.
See you.